being here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Ambassadorial Wing and another installment of Afternoons with the Ambassador. And good to see you all again today. I hope you're all having a great Sunday. And today, going to be continuing my review series on The Lord of the Rings, the extended cut. And today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the Two Towers. And as always, thank you all for being here today. Hope you enjoy the stream this afternoon. And yeah, we don't stand on a whole lot of ceremony here on the Ambassador Wing, so we're just going to jump right on into the topic of this afternoon, and that was, of course, the Two Towers. And I will be dropping the link in the chat here in just a second and everything for anybody who's tuned in today and wants to join me for the discussion. So, but yeah, this this is going to be a fun discussion because Two Towers is it's a hell of a ride for a movie. And to give a little background, obviously this is the middle chapter of the Lord of the Rings of trilogy, and very obviously it is. And it's it's got its particular charms, and it's an interesting film and everything in general, because oftentimes when you have a trilogy series, the middle chapter, it has a lot to live up to, because if the first movie is so massively successful, how do you follow up with the sequel or the middle chapter? And I would imagine that when Tolkien was writing The Lord of the Rings, and obviously this was split into 3 separate books, the pressure was rather intense. And I shout out to the chat real quick. Aaron World Order. Aaron, it is good to see you, bud. And I will go ahead and I will drop the link in the chat and everything for those that want to join me this afternoon. So, and also, Fiona Wolf, good afternoon, my dear. Good to see you as well. Thank you for popping in. I hope you have a good night at work, and hope you enjoy. Yes, Air Order. Chucky was in the movie. So, but yeah, honestly, as I was saying, both as a film and as a book, the Two Towers had a lot to live up to because of such a massive success that the Fellowship of the Ring was. How do you build upon that? And that was no small task by any stretch. But surprisingly, both Tolkien and Peter Jackson and those that worked with him on the production, they were able to do it. And like I said, today we're going to do a deep dive into it. We're going to talk about the characters. We're going to talk about the story. We're going to talk about how Jackson and his crew were able to adapt this middle chapter and turn it into such a interesting story, and go from there. And of course, I don't do these streams alone. I have a very loyal and very dedicated crew of fellow ambassadors, and with me this afternoon, you know him, you love him, Aaron of Aaron World Order. Aaron, good afternoon, bud. Good to see you.
Good afternoon. Sorry. Gollum. Oh, sorry, I suffered in my throat.
Gollum. Yes. So, and I do want to bring up Fiona Wolf's comment here real quick. I wish I had Hobbit feet instead of plantar fasciitis. Fiona, I know
Oh, that's
exactly how
painful.
you. I know exactly how you feel. I don't have that exact condition, but I do have arthritis in both my ankles, so I do understand exactly what you mean. At least that way, it wouldn't hurt to stand up all the time at the moment. Yep, Fiona, I do understand. So, but yeah, Aaron, you were with me last week for when we did our breakdown on Fellowship, and appreciate you being here again this week. And I want to honestly start off by talking about the Hobbit in the room, and that is, of course, Gollum. And when they showed Gollum early in just a few brief moments that we saw him in Fellowship, he was frightening, but he was also an intriguing character. But for the Two Towers, Andy Serkis did something truly outstanding for his performance, because not only did he bring a true physicality to the character, but he also brought the character to life. And I think not only that, but the script that Jackson and his bunch and everything created for the character of Gollum is something truly outstanding. So, Aaron, your thoughts?
On Gollum,
Hmm.
yeah, Andy Serkis. I mean, played Gollum perfectly. Um, the script, the way Jackson wrote Gollum, was just amazing. I mean, like, let's be honest, the whole trilogy, the scripts were just amazing. There's nothing bad you can say about the script. It all made sense. So, so, but Gollum was like one of those characters where like that intrigues you. Like, is he bad or is he good or is he just misunderstood? And Circus in the script makes you go into think saying, oh, he's misunderstood because
Hmm.
he's not bad. He's a victim. And I like how they portray that in this film. That he's a victim.
Well, and honestly, that's truth. And of course, we will learn more about Gollum
Mm.
in the opening for Return of the King next week, right? And so on. But what we see of Smeagol,
Smeagol, yeah.
aka Gollum, he is a very pitiful. He is a somewhat sympathetic character, but he's also. I like the way that Jackson and them described him. He is like the embodiment of addiction.
Yes,
And
yes.
the conversation there in Moria in Fellowship between Bilbo and Gandalf, and when Gandalf says that Smeagol's uh, life is a sad story,
Oh yeah.
and that is very true, because if you think about it, if you look at the ring itself, as we described it, is a source of corruption and destruction, and that is the truth of it,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what Sauron himself does. He corrupts and he destroys everything that he touches.
Yeah.
But here in Two Towers, we are given a face for just how truly destructive the ring can be. I mean, it has its own will. It has its
It's
own
also
mind.
it's
It has,
also
yeah.
it kind of Bilbo didn't go to the level of where Gollum is, but Bilbo even showed some level of corruption in him. Not a lot. There's
Hmm.
times he was a little bit when, especially in the first movie when they were back in Rivendell, you could saw that Bilbo still was kind of like attached to the ring, right? And then also the story of Gollum was also a foreshadowing of perhaps what happens not perhaps what happens in Return of the King with Frodo
Hmm.
because he falls for it.
Yes, and that is truly. I have to admit, when we went to see it in theaters years and years ago,
Mhm.
even for someone like myself and my mother, who we aren't trained psychologists or anything, but you saw the split personality
Yeah,
of Gollum, of Smeagol, and you did truly, to a degree, feel sorry for him. You felt pity
he's
for him,
he's like
and
he's like Two Face. not from the movies, not, or but like the Two Face character, because Two Face, you have Harvey Dent and Two Face battling out with each other with the two different
Yes.
psyches, right? Yeah, that's what Gollum was basically.
Yeah, especially in that very
Yeah,
especially in that very iconic scene that that you have
yeah,
in Two Towers, where Smeagol and Gollum are contending against one another. He's contending against himself
yeah.
and trying to dissuade himself from killing him. But here's the thing: the other side of Gollum, of Smeagol, is so twisted and so corrupted by the ring that he truly believes that it is his. But the fact is, he knows it's a lie because he knows who the ring belongs to. Because there's a scene in the extended cut when Frodo and Sam initially meet Gollum,
Yeah.
and Gollum is going on ahead of them, and he's like, "No, we can't do this. We can't take it back to him." And you can see that even Gollum obviously is afraid of Sauron,
Oh
and
yeah.
that is right there. That really builds the tension of
Well,
just
he was
how
being
true.
tortured by he was being tortured by him in the first.
Yeah,
In the,
he had been
he's the
taken
one who
to
revealed the location, right, for the wing raves.
exactly. And yeah, when he was taken, I think it was probably to Barad-dûr,
Yeah.
where he was
Well,
tortured. He might have been taken
well,
either.
in the books,
Hmm.
I know in the books this has to do with Fellowship, not Two Towers. The
Hmm.
Ringwraiths didn't know where Hobbiton was, right?
No, they had no clue.
They had to go to Saruman, right? They went to Isengard. Saruman told them where it was, I believe.
Mm, I honestly don't recall because it's been so long since I've read
I
Fellowship.
think
But
somebody could get me wrong, but I believe it was Saruman because Saruman like at that time was still at the time was aligned with Sauron. We just didn't, it wasn't revealed yet until the fight with Gandalf. But that's not in the
right,
that's not in the movies. That's I think that's in the book.
probably.
Yeah.
But the truly incredible thing for Andy Serkis, his performance, is he brings this character to life in such a complex way. And the fact is, we had not really seen. Okay, we had seen a purely digital character be brought to life before in film. If you take a look at, say, for instance, the Star Wars prequels with Jar Jar Binks and even Watto. But here's the thing with Gollum, this is a character that is for fantasy readers, for people who are fans of fantasy, the fantasy genre. Is a character we've always been fascinated with because there is at play the duality of
Hmm.
the human spirit. The side of us that is altruistic, is decent, is good, but there is the side of us that can be twisted, that can be turned into something malevolent or evil, or even something that is beyond description.
Hmm.
And I think in a lot of ways what you get with Gollum in the Two Towers, he wants to try and revert back to the person he was, but the problem is he has been under the sway of the ring for so long,
Yeah.
and the Gollum personality has been so ingrained into
I
him
don't know.
that
It's like what 5 centuries, maybe. I don't know. I think.
something like 500 years, I think, is what
Yeah.
Galadriel says. Yeah, in the intro for Fellowship, and
Yeah.
he after the Frodo and them are captured by Faramir and his group, and the soldiers beat Smeagol, beat Gollum. The Gollum personality um,
Dominates
comes back and everything is
and
more
dominates
dominant. And
because Smeagol personality felt betrayed by Frodo. Like Frodo's like set him up, and Smeagol basically gave in to Gollum's personality side.
yeah, exactly. And because Gollum is almost like the protector personality of the two
Hmm.
personalities that are at work in um in Smeagol.
Yeah.
And you know, there's sort of the thing I love most about the extended cut of Two Towers is we do get more scenes with Frodo and Gollum slash Smeagol, particularly when they're in the swamps the swamps of the dead. I think it's, if I
Oh,
remember correctly.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's that one scene where Frodo says Gollum's true name, Smeagol,
Hmm.
and it's like there's a light there. It's a light switch that flips on in Smeagol's head. He's like, "What did you call me?" And he's like, "You were not so much different from a hobbit once." And the
Yeah.
fact is,
Yeah.
and
They
the fact
weren't.
was, at one point, Smeagol, as at least as we understand it, was a hobbit. He wasn't
Well,
evil.
yeah.
He wasn't evil. He wasn't a bad person. He was a victim of the
Hmm.
corruption of the ring. It brought out the worst parts of Smeagol's personality, and drove him to
Man.
kill his own to kill
Yeah.
his own kin.
So, his own brother.
Yeah, Deagle.
And his brother, because his brother would have done the exact same thing to him. His brother's being corrupted too.
Yeah, because that is
Hmm.
just how powerful and insidious the ring truly is.
Yeah.
And the truth is, there's another interesting debate going on in this film, not just with the character of Gollum or Smeagol, but with Aragorn as well,
Yes.
because he is fighting against his own lineage, his own bloodline as well, because he believes that man is weak and frail and incapable of rallying itself to do something noble.
Hmm.
And he goes on a journey in this film as well. He goes from someone that is just essentially, they're trying to hunt down the Uruk-hai who have kidnapped Meriadoc and Pippin, Merry and
Yeah.
Pippin, and you've got him and Gimli and Legolas. And at first, it's just them trying to locate their friends, but they get caught up in this
Rohan
whirlwind of events where the king of Rohan, Theoden, has been corrupted by Saruman.
and
And
Chucky.
say, yes,
Chucky.
yes, Brad Dourif as Grima Wormtongue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I will say this. Brad Dourif has long been one of my favorite character actors. He is a truly talented actor, and he's done some really interesting roles. I mean, obviously here as Grima Wormtongue, he's done the voice of Chucky from the Child's Play
He was an
movies.
alien, wasn't he? One of the alien movies.
He was in Alien Resurrection. He was one of the
Okay.
scientists. Yeah.
Okay.
He was obviously in the David Lynch version adaptation of Dune as
Hmm.
the Mentat Pirate to Freeze.
Hmm.
And also had a very powerful cameo in I think it's in season 3 of Babylon 5, which I cover here on my channel, where he plays a monk. And it turns out that he is actually a character who has gone through what they call the death of personality. And I don't want to get off on a big tangent with Brad Dourif, but I'll just say this: his performance in that particular episode was very powerful, and he did a truly wonderful job. And of course, him as Grima Wormtongue, he's his character has a very interesting journey, especially in the extended cut of Two Towers, because we see him as this very insidious, almost
Yeah.
the appearance of a very insidious and a very evil character.
It gives it right away. Like you can just know this
Yeah,
guy's bad.
but the interesting thing is in the extended cut, both of Two Towers and the Return of the King, which we'll get into next week.
Yeah.
You see that even he was corrupted. I believe
Yeah.
that he was he,
I'm
he
not
was
sure
corrupt.
about his origins because they didn't explain in the movies. I think his origins. I'm not. I don't remember. I know the origins, like the history behind Wormtongue. He wasn't like. He was kind of born like ugly and always ridiculed for his looks and stuff or something like that. I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure. Maybe that could be the reason.
That's
But he
and
was
that's
all,
a possibility.
but Theoden always treated him like with respect and stuff.
Yeah, because I think Theoden recognized well, and he says it so says it so well in the extended version or the extended cut of Return of the King. You were once a man of Rohan.
Yeah.
Come down and be free of him. And you believe Theoden. He wants to give Grima a second chance, and then of course Saruman treats him rather brutally and rather cruelly. There's one line in the extended cut. I don't know if you remember this, but Saruman says to him, "You stink of horse."
Yes.
And you there. Saruman has such disdain for Grima, for Wormtongue, and you almost get the sense that if he had had the chance, Wormtongue may have returned to Rohan, but the problem was he had gone down such a path that maybe he felt like he would have not been given the second chance. But the crazy thing is, in the aftermath of Gandalf exorcising Saruman's spirit from Theoden,
Yeah.
even Aragorn shows him a moment of sympathy and tries to lend his hand to get him up after Theoden tosses him out of Medicel, out of the hall. And Wormtongue just knocks his hand aside and spits on him and then runs away and runs to Orthanc, to Saruman.
Yeah.
And but yeah, as I was saying with Aragorn, he's having to come to terms with the fact that he is a leader. He is a natural born leader, not because of just his birthright, but because of the opportunity that he had, that his mother gave him by bringing him to Rivendell to be with the elves and to
Be
have
raised by them.
to have a surrogate father in the form of Elrod. And you get the impression that the elves treated Aragorn rather well, treated Elisar very well, tried to build him up, even and
Yes.
especially Arwen. Arwen believes in Aragorn. Not only does she love him, but she believes that he has the potential to be a great king, to be a great leader. And throughout the course of this film, you see him start to take on that mantle to be a leader, not so much a king, but to
Yeah.
help rally the people of Rohan. And Gandalf, when they discover Gandalf in Fangorn, there's several scene there's a scene, a conversation between Gandalf and Aragorn, and Gandalf says to him, they will need you at the end. They will need your strength, because even as strong as Theoden is, he eventually will lose hope himself. And go ahead, Aaron. Oh, okay. Anyway, but the really fascinating thing for me with Aragorn in this film is, especially with the extended cut, we learn a little bit more of his origin. Okay, go ahead, Aaron, please.
Well, I don't know what I was gonna say. What were you saying for like those few seconds?
I was talking about Aragorn and his journey through this film.
Oh yeah, he definitely took a leadership role. I agree. Not to, it was just a slow leadership role on his pathway to eventually becoming king. But when Gandalf after he did the exorcism with Theoden and Saruman, that's when Gandalf had told Aragorn that they'll need him for the Rohan when they have to go to Helm's Deep. Even though Helm's Deep they didn't agree with Helm's Deep, they had to fight back because he knew Aragorn was ready, like ready to be a leader. He knew that, and he had to go get the Wires of Rohan, which were banned because of Wormtongue, right? Like Wormtongue convinced Theoden when he was corrupted to exile the Wires of Rohan and Eeyore, right? Carl Urban's character. And I have a question: was Wormtongue in the books?
Yes,
I know in the
Wormtongue was a character in the books. Yes,
yes, yes.
absolutely.
Did he
Because
always have feelings for Eowyn?
I think they may have built that up a little bit more than it may have existed in the books, but I think, yeah, I think it was. I think, well, here's the interesting thing with all of the film with the extended cuts of Lord of the Rings. They were able to add in a lot more from the books than was initially there for the theatrical cuts, but
Hmm.
they also did take some creative liberties because you look at the structure of Two Towers
Yeah.
and it works well for a book, but in terms of a film, it's kind of it's not it doesn't really flow that particularly well. And the fact that they removed the whole conflict between Frodo and Sam and Gollum and Shelob, and they put that in
The
Return of the
third book
King,
movie.
and
Yeah,
they
the
had
third
it,
movie.
and they had the Two Towers focused on the conflict between Rohan and Saruman, and of course you had the Ents, and you had Mary and Pippin discovering the Ents and so on, and of course you've got John Rhys Davies doing I think honestly a very wonderful job as the voice of Treebeard. Now, there's a character that I don't think we would have ever imagined them being able to bring to life, but amazingly through robotics and CGI, and of course some good voice work by John Rhys Davies, they were able to
Yeah.
do so. And I have to admit, Treebeard, he can be a very frustrating character in terms of how he operates mentally, but in terms of just how intriguing a character he is. He is a he was one of the most interesting characters that was brought to life in the Lord of the Rings films.
Mm.
And I think for Tolkien in particular, he had such a love for nature and he had such a respect for it. And he really poured all of that love and respect for nature into Treebeard, and of course, with another character that we don't see in the first movie, and that is, of course, Tom Bombadil. And the fact that they used a lot of dialogue from Tom Bombadil for Treebeard's dialogue in
Mm.
the movie, I thought was a very nice touch because the two characters shared a lot of similarities.
Yes.
They were very old, they were very wise, they were um, in their own respects exceedingly powerful. Because let's be honest here, Treebeard can wreck if Treebeard can wreck a handful of orcs. Imagine what a whole army of Ents can do. And we
Yes.
do see what an entire army of Ents can do when they storm Orthanc.
Because Saruman, like the majority of his army was at Helm's Deep, and the ones that were left at Isengard was not nearly enough to stop
No,
the
because
Ents.
it was well as they say,
He didn't prepare
all,
because he wasn't expecting the Ents to attack. He was never expecting that because they're not violent creatures.
no, but once they get angry enough,
Yeah,
they
it's
start
because of
rolling.
them. It's because
Yeah, because
Saruman used them, right, to make the orcs, right? Like the
well, no, it was more so the fact that Saruman had lost his respect for nature, for the
oh,
forest, for the woods, for the
and
living
yeah, and he
world.
killed some of those people. Yeah.
He killed so many of the trees. And Gandalf says it very powerfully but very distinctly. A thing is about to happen that has not happened since the elder days.
Hmm.
The Ents are about to wake up and realize that they are strong.
Yeah.
And there's one other line that he has in there. The coming of Merry and Pippin is like the coming of small rocks
Yeah.
before an avalanche, before a landslide, and that landslide is, of course, the Ents, and it will be the Ents that sack Orthanc, that sack Isengard,
Yeah.
and it's
They open up the dam because
yeah, the Ents open up the dam,
yeah.
they sack and destroy this Isengard. And that's another really interesting. It's a callback to the first film. It's a line of dialogue that Galadriel says to Frodo, even the smallest person
Exactly.
can change the course of the future. And despite their diminutive size, Merry and Pippin, they play their part in the War of the Ring. And for their part, they get the Ents going. And granted, the Ents only do that one thing. They sack Isengard. They are the jailers of Saruman for a time, and then of course
Yeah.
that's it for the Ents. But their impact is no less felt because if they don't sack or storm Isengard, then you have potentially a war on two fronts because all of that industry, all of that factory that Saruman had built up to create the army of Uruk-hai could just be used again to do the same thing, even if that army that is destroyed at Helm's Deep is destroyed at Helm's Deep.
Hmm.
So
The problem with Saruman, he vastly underestimates his opponents.
for as you know that, and that's the other interesting
Sauron
thing.
doesn't. That's the difference. Sauron
Mhm.
doesn't.
No, Sauron, I think, learned his lesson from his
Hmm.
master, in a manner of
Yes.
speaking, from Morgoth. But the really interesting thing is with Saruman, even as wise and as powerful
Yeah.
amongst the Astari, amongst the wizards as he is, he loses his way. He
Yes.
believes himself to be more than just a servant of
His
the Lord of
arrogance gets the best of him.
his arrogance and him being corrupted by Sauron as well and everything. Because what was done to Sauron does to others. He does it to Saruman.
Yeah, Sauron was the.
And
Yeah, Saruman is Sauron. What Melkor and Morgoth, whatever, did to Sauron. That's what Saruman
yes,
is.
yeah, it's an entire cycle
Yeah.
of corruption in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
And you see that play out. You see corruption spread from this one very innocuous looking object, the ring,
And
one
and
ring.
Sauron, I don't know, Sauron was going to betray Melkor and Morgoth. He was going to do it because he bailed on him in the War of the First Age. He bailed on Melkor and Morgoth because he saw it was a losing cause.
Yeah.
Saruman was definitely going to turn on Sauron too. There
Well,
was.
because here's
It's
the
like the
thing.
Sith thing, right? It's like the Sith thing. You turn on your master.
In a manner of speaking, yeah.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. Yeah, the Uruk-hai are described rather accurately as a force to do one thing, to destroy the world of men.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
But
orcs are.
guess
Yeah,
where
basically.
but guess what? If Saruman had gotten his hands on the One Ring, he has his army. He's got his fortress because Isengard is a relatively well fortified location. But I think even Saruman realizes that Sauron will not tolerate a rival,
No.
even as beneficial as a
That's why Sauron
asset.
waited for Malkor's or Morgoth's defeat to raise the
Exactly.
power.
Exactly.
Because Sauron, like Malcolm and Morgoth is smart. He's intelligent and smart, but I would say Sauron might be a little bit more intelligent than Morgoth and Malcolm. I know that's saying something,
Hmm.
because Malcolm Morgoth, like Sauron, can manipulate, but he's more of a force of power. Like he'll be like more. He'll use his he'll go to battle more and stuff. Sauron would do the opposite. He used mostly his mind, his intelligence to get what he
Yes,
wants.
exactly.
Hmm.
Well, and you see that play out through the two towers.
Yes.
You see Saruman unleash his forces upon Rohan, believing that Rohan is close to breaking, and he's not entirely wrong
Hmm.
because he's done such a
Wall was on the verge. They was on the verge of
yeah,
falling.
because and you see it in the beginning. Well, you see it in one of the introduction scenes for Aomer when they go out looking for Theoden's son, Theodred.
That was a sad scene.
And
That was a sad scene.
oh yeah, yeah,
Grieving over
absolutely,
his son. I mean,
yeah. And but here, here's the interesting thing about the two towers itself. As crafty and as powerful as the antagonists truly are, the heroes, by sheer luck and by their own intellect, are able to find a way to overcome all these schemes that have been so well laid. But the other interesting dynamic at work in the Two Towers is the fact that while there is a victory for the heroes, their ultimate goal is to give Frodo a chance, or to get Frodo into Mordor. But he is in the company of someone who is not at all trustworthy at this point. And there's an interesting little scene towards the end of Two Towers when they're getting ready to leave Osgiliath, and Faramir,
Yeah, the brother.
Boromir's brother, corners Gollum and says, "If any harm comes to either one of them, may death find you quickly."
Yeah, because he doesn't
And
trust him.
no, he doesn't trust him.
Neither does Sam.
And,
Sam never trusted him either. So
yeah, but that's the amazing thing about a character like Gollum,
yeah,
is that, and Frodo says it, I have to believe that he can come back because the same thing is happening to me.
and
That
that's why Sam plays an important role.
Yes, very true.
Because to keep little sanity in check.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. And I want to say hello to the chat, PLK Entertainment. PLK, it's good to see you.
okay,
And love Two Towers of Film. It's more of a grandiose build up to an epic climax. Yeah, very true. Well, and that's the PLK. Always a pleasure to see you, bud. And hope you're having a good day. And that's the crazy thing about, as I was saying before you came in, Aaron, the middle chapter of a trilogy. It has so much to build to carry on from the opening chapter, and particularly with a story like Lord of the Rings, it has a lot to live up to, because it's got to be just as big, just as epic, but still carry on the story that it started in the opening chapter.
mm-hmm.
And the great thing was, so many people were invested from the success by the first film, that Two Towers couldn't help but be successful.
The sequel
And
curse, that kind of thing. Yeah,
yeah, but in this case, while it is the middle chapter, it is, I think, a very successful middle. It's a very successful middle
Middle
chapter.
Chapter might be a most important kind of movie in the trilogy, though.
Yes, very
It's
very
like,
true. So, and to our good friend and fellow ambassador Ace Mowick, Ace, good to see you, bud, and appreciate you being here today. So, but you we've the interesting thing is, Two Towers stands in a long list of middle chapters of trilogies
yeah,
in cinema. I mean, you look at, well, one of the very first trilogies ever done. That is, of course, the original trilogy of Star Wars,
empires. Like
Empire
back.
Strikes Back, exactly. And the interesting thing is, the middle chapter is always, to some degrees, darker and more dire, because you really are putting your characters, your lead characters, your main characters, in a heightened sense of danger,
Mm-hmm.
and you're really raising the stakes of what they're going through. And with Two Towers, you've got, of course, Frodo and Sam on their journey. You've got Aragorn and the rest of the fellowship on theirs.
Yes.
And there's no certainty that anybody's going to come out of this alive. It is very likely that the maybe one or two of the main characters may end up dead.
Yeah.
But amazingly, in Two Towers, they all make it through. Now, granted, they all realize that they still have a very long road ahead of them. But
Yes.
on the same token, you realize that the bond of the fellowship is what carries them through ultimately. They just go about their journey in different ways, and they have their own separate dangers. And the crazy thing, one of the really cool scenes in Two Towers is when Gollum leads them to the Black Gate, because that's exactly what Frodo told him to do. Lead us to the Black Gate.
Yeah.
But
Which is not a
the
wise idea.
no, because I don't think. Well, the thing is, Frodo and Sam don't realize just how truly well fortified the Black
Oh,
Gate
yeah.
is.
I mean, yeah. Like
And
Soren is prepared, man. Like just because he's like Soren's still alive, he still gives out orders. Like, like he's always that's what Soren is. He's always ready.
well, you've got you've got the physical manifestation of his presence, the eye
Yeah.
atop of the tower or the fortress of Barad-dûr,
According,
and
if you don't see it in the book, apparently he does have his body in that tower, but in the
but
it's a
yeah,
rumor.
his physical form isn't at its full strength.
Yes, yeah, but it's
It's
there.
Yeah, but they make mention of it in the making of videos and so on, the making of material for the extended cut of Two Towers.
But it's,
They had considered showing a physical form of Sauron
yes,
at
but
different points,
the
and he
thing
was going
is,
to be but he was going to be very decrepit and desiccated
uh,
and very monstrous in his appearance, but they decided not to go that direction. I honestly think,
because even as in his weakest state, he's so damn powerful.
well, yeah, because Saruman says it perfectly. Even though he cannot fully manifest physical form, his spirit has not lost any of
No,
its potency.
mm-mm.
When he says that to Gandalf in Fellowship,
Yeah,
but the as I was starting to say, being the middle chapter of this story, Jackson and Philip O'Brien's and all of them, they had a tall order ahead of them. How do you equal the emotional impact of everything that happened in the first film and carry it through? How do you craft a story that's essentially the middle chapter of that's everybody's wanting to get to the conclusion, but you want people to go on this journey with you because there's a lot of good in Two Towers that I think we often miss, and we've kind of discussed it a little bit here today so far today. And with the character like Gollum, you have this very pitiful yet very malevolent character, even though he's not particularly physically menacing.
no,
You realize that
he's pretty intelligent. He's smart,
he's devious.
devious. Yes,
He is exceedingly devious because that is what the ring has brought out
yeah,
in him. That drive and that need. Like I said, it's an addiction.
yes.
He
It's a
has to
drug.
have the ring. He must possess it.
Mhm.
It must be his. Even though he realizes that the ring isn't truly his. He understands who it really belongs to, but for Gollum, it doesn't matter because in his mind, the ring is his, no
Yes,
one else's. But the ring also
but
is going to,
the ring will always go back to his master
yeah, because that's what its intention is.
because he wants
And,
to do. Yeah,
yeah, well, the interesting thing that they did with Two Towers, particularly with the character of Faramir, is in the books, Faramir is not affected by the ring whatsoever.
no, no.
He is not.
He's not like his brother.
He's not like Boromir, and he's not even like other characters in the universe. He's his spirit is completely immune to
There's
being corrupted.
there's signs of that in the movies too. Kind of, there's signs of that in his movie.
Mm, well, no, because here's the thing: what they did with Faramir is they realized if you have this character that is so immune to the power of corruption of the
Yeah.
ring, of the One Ring, it almost kills the potency of the ring
Oh,
in a
that's
lot
true.
of ways. So what they decided to do is they switched that
It didn't.
particular aspect of
It
the
didn't.
character.
I was gonna say it didn't become obsessed like his brother. Like it was there, but not to a point like his brother. He was still strong. He was stronger than his brother. That's what I'll say. He has stronger will than his brother.
He did, yeah. I would say Faramir did have a stronger will than his brother because, but at the same time, he's seeking to get his father's favor, and we do
Yeah, because
see
his
it in the
father. Yeah, if in
yeah
Return
of
of King,
Denethor
because his
because of
father
Denethor, and we have
favoritism to his brother Boromir. Even though
yeah,
Boromir and Faramir, they get along very well. Like they're
well,
like
well, if you remember, Aaron, there's an extended scene in Two Towers where Faramir is having that flashback to when they retake Osgiliath,
yeah,
and you have that very rousing speech and scene by Boromir by Sean Bean, and you see that this is a pair of brothers who do genuinely love each other, but unfortunately, the father shows more love and appreciation to Boromir than he does to Faramir, and Denethor is very dismissive of Faramir,
yes. And
and that's
Boromir tries
unfortunate.
to tell his father, tries to tell Denethor, like to support his other son too. Like he tries to tell him that
Yeah,
he'll
but yeah,
support.
yeah.
He
Boromir
just
is
brush him
like,
off.
yeah. Boromir tells his father, he's like, well, it wasn't just me, Dad. Faramir played his part as well, and Denethor's like, do not tell me of Faramir's uses because they are few. And I'm like, what the hell did your son do to you to make you act this way towards him?
This is before. I think this is before the corruption of Denethor because if Return of the King. 'Cause if they didn't, because in Return of the King, I know this is Return of the King. In the book,
Mhm,
Denethor had a Palantir, right, of Sauron. Sauron was corrupting Denethor. They didn't really
mhm.
show that in Return of the King with the Palantir, but you knew he was being corrupted by Sauron.
Yeah, because they did have a Palantir
Yeah.
in Minas Tirith. It's in one of the vaults,
Yes.
evidently, and well, Gandalf says it in Fellowship when he sees that Saruman has been using the Palantir that was housed there, and then when he touches it, of course, he sees the Eye of Sauron. And we can assume that there's another Palantir. Granted, we do we if you remember in the extended cut of Return of the King, um, when Saruman is killed, uh, Aragorn picks up the Palantir that he carries on him
Yeah.
and uses it at the towards the climax of the film. But you can make the inference that there was potentially another Palantir
Mm.
um, uh, in Minas Tirith,
Yeah.
and that Saruman had been working on Denethor on a psychological or mental level,
Yeah.
and
That's because Sauron. That's the reason for why he didn't do anything. Like that's why they had to do. That's why they had to. Gandalf had to do Pippin to light the towers to call on
mhm,
for allies because Denethor was not going to do that because Sauron knew if he could corrupt Denethor by using Palantir and stuff, Minas Tirith's and Gondor's defenses would be low.
exactly.
Would not be prepared for a surprise attack. That's why Gandalf they tried to convince him, and Gandalf knew. Oh yeah, something's definitely wrong with Denethor. So
Well,
and
here's
Sauron uses grief. Sauron, I'll just say Sauron uses Boromir's Denethor's grief of losing Boromir against him. That's one of the things he used.
well, yeah, well, and the same is true. And just shout to the chat, Yvette Diavol, Yvette. Good to
Yeah.
see you, my dear, and good evening to you as well. Hope you're having a good day. Well, and that's the interesting thing because you have that same issue with Theoden.
Helm's
Um,
Deep. Yeah.
yeah, well, the thing is, you see when you see Theoden at the beginning of the film, he's a very broken down and a very withered individual because of Saruman's corruption
Yeah.
and his influence, and also of Wormtongue
Yeah.
poisoning Theoden's will. and you see that Rohan is weak, it is vulnerable, and Saruman is just waiting for his opportunity to strike and take it for his own. But because of the intervention of Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas and obviously Gandalf, that whole scheme is stopped. And you see, Theoden is not one that is seeking out war. That's the big thing.
No.
But he comes to understand that war is upon him, and Aragorn says as much. You do not need to seek war. War is upon you. Saruman has declared war on Rohan.
Yes.
He has already exacted a very heavy toll upon your forces as it is. He's taken the life of your son. He almost robbed you of your will and your life, and he almost took your throne away from you. And you even see Gandalf trying to, in a positive way, coerce Theoden to take action. And he does, but it's not the type of action that they feel is prudent at the time. Instead of gathering his army and marching on Isengard, they decide to run to Helm's Deep. And the crazy thing is, in a way, Theoden, I think, made the right move, because if you think about this from a purely strategic standpoint, luring your opponent into a bottleneck, which is essentially what Helm's Deep is. Granted, they had a lot of help at the end. Was a smart move, because they were able to destroy Saruman's army in one fell swoop between the forces there. Granted, they were rather limited in Helm's Deep itself.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if they went to Isengard, they probably would not make it alive.
It would have been a much harder fight, because you would have had Saruman there that they would have had to contend with. Now, granted, they would have potentially had Gandalf at their side, and he would have probably been able to counteract anything that Saruman might have been able to do, because at this time,
I mean, even before Gandalf would have come with the Warriors of Rohan, because they'll fight for the king. But they might not have the elves to have as allies there, because remember the elves came, right? To help
now the crazy thing is
that was even enough. It was even enough, because before Gandalf came back, well, Saruman was going to win that. They were going to defeat them at Helm's Deep.
Well, yeah, because they had broken through. They had pretty much crushed every line of defense, and they were driven back all the way into the main hall of Helm's Deep itself.
Mm-hmm.
But amazingly, between the cavalry that Gandalf is leading, not to mention the trees that were woken up by the Ents that come in and polish off the rest of the Uruk-hai.
Yeah, the ones that stayed behind.
The Saruman's army was destroyed in due course, in due order, and he didn't see that coming. Even as wise and as powerful as Saruman was, he didn't see all the other pieces at play on the board.
That's the difference between him and Sauron. Sauron would probably saw that.
Maybe because here's the thing. The thing you have to realize about Sauron, his only main concern is relocating the ring. Everything else is secondary to him, because once he has the ring, it's game over. It's game over for everybody else, because that's how powerful of a being that Sauron is, and he doesn't think that his opponents would do anything other than use the ring against him. He figures
they would have to go to the other side of the earth, of not Middle Earth, but convince the gods, all the elves, when Undying Lands, and be like, we need your help again, because they really only interfered in the defeat of Morgoth and Melkor or whatever, right? They probably have to try to convince them, and it will try like, yeah, we kind of need your help.
Yeah, but here's the thing: remove that entire possibility from the situation.
Yeah.
You're dealing with just Sauron himself, and you're dealing with the forces that are aligned against him. And right now they are scattered, they are divided, they are in disarray, seemingly.
Hmm.
But through Saruman's defeat of his army at Helm's Deep, it sent a message that the world of men was not as weak and as
No.
vulnerable as Sauron believed, and that's why he would strike. That's why he will strike so hard and so brutally at Minas Tirith. So, hey, Aaron, I gotta step away for just a minute. So if you
All
can
right.
carry on, I will be back in just a minute.
Yes. So yeah, the defeat of well, yeah, I like yeah, okay. So okay. Saruman, Christopher Lee's character, amazing, right? Played that character very well. So what else to say? I liked I did like the relationship between Eowyn and Aragorn. Um, Even though Eowyn, you could tell she was falling in love with Aragorn, and Aragorn knew it, but they were close. And Aragorn, like, I loved an extended edition where where Eowyn found out that Aragorn fought with her father like some years ago, and she'd be like, "That would make you 87 years old. That would make you a Dunedain or of the ancient Numenor race." I love that. And that's because if you know Silmarillion, the Dunedain are descendants of the fall of the Numerians, the fall, which the survivors of Numenor founded two kingdoms in Middle Earth, which is Gondor and Arnor. But I believe Arnor was actually been taken over by the Nazgûl, if I'm correct, the Witch King. But if you Aragorn's ancestor Isildur and his father was one king of Gondor, and I think Isildur's uncle became the king of Arnor. That's from the fall of Numenor. Because I know I'm going off a tangent here to similar, because Sauron corrupted the king of Numenor,
Yeah,
and and Aragorn's ancestor, who is a father of Isildur, didn't fall for the corruption of the king and Sauron. So they decided to ship to Middle Earth. They were spared from Iluvatar's wrath.
yeah, exactly. I was listening to what you were saying while everything when I stepped away, Aaron. You bring up a good point, a good point within the film, and that is of course the character of Eowyn.
Yeah,
And you know,
the Shield Maiden, like in the
yeah,
Valkyrie, or
I, the, I love her character in this film. I love her even more in Return of the King. You know, the crazy thing is, a lot of people will have accused Tolkien of putting female characters on a pedestal and putting them out of the scope of danger. But in Eowyn's case, she seeks out danger,
yeah, she
and
wants to fight.
and
It's
she
her
wants
home.
to fight. Yeah, she wants to fight for Rohan, and
Yeah, in Middle Earth. Yeah,
she doesn't see the glory and fame in finding beds
no,
and and tending to the wounded and everything as would normally be the role for someone of her position and of her gender. Instead, she wants to ride out into battle. She wants to be there in the midst of the fight. And there's a very powerful line, very beautiful. It's a very cool scene there in Medicel before they leave. And Aragorn says to her, "What do you fear?" She's like, "I fear a cage. I fear a prison
yeah.
where where old age becomes accustomed to him." I'm kind of paraphrasing because I can't remember exactly how she words it, but essentially she says, "I don't want to die an old woman, safe and warm in my bed." She's like, "I want to live a life of renown."
She wants to do something.
And
Yeah, she
yeah,
wants to.
and he says it, and he says it very powerfully, and I think very respectfully to her. You are a daughter of kings, a shield maiden of Rohan. That will not be your fate.
Yeah.
And he's right. And shout out to the chat. Price is right. Reviews. Price, it is good to see you, man. Appreciate you being here. Yeah, and I'll bring up your comment here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that is my favorite scene in Two
Ceremony. Yeah. The
Towers
exorcism ceremony. Yeah.
is the White Wizard's exorcism. Yeah, when Gandalf exercises, and we've already discussed that a little bit
And
already.
Ceremony's like, hold on. Ceremony's like, oh, now he's he's in charge of the council now because he's the White Wizard.
Yeah. Oh, and
he's just powerful as him.
I know we've done some deep dive into like the psychology of the characters and so on, but I do want to remark upon something. One of my all-time, it is by far one of my all-time favorite intro scenes to a movie, not to mention one of my all-time favorite fight scenes ever, and that is of course the opening scene of Two Towers, where you see Gandalf battle the Balrog. And
I can't believe we forgot about that. That was one of the best scenes ever in cinema.
It truly is, because it is big, it is bombastic, it is epic in every sense of the word. You have this aged, powerful wizard, quote unquote, going up against this embodiment of evil,
demon,
of evil and darkness.
The Bane of Morgoth or Melkor. Doesn't matter.
And of course you have, of course, the scene there in Fangorn where Gandalf is recounting it for Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli, and he's like, I had cast down my enemy and smote his ruin on the mountainside.
Yeah. In the book, that was apparently an 8-day battle.
Yes, it was a very long and very grueling. It was a very long and grueling battle.
Yeah, and people, I'll say this: Gandalf did die in that battle, but there's a reason he resurrected. And I know there's some people that some philosophers say, "Oh, they're comparing to Jesus." No, it's a different thing. He was resurrected by Iluvatar, but they cannot say Iluvatar resurrected him because for legal reasons.
Probably, yeah, and that's fine. You don't necessarily need that particular line of dialogue to make the whole thing make sense. But I have to say, Gandalf's dialogue in that particular scene, darkness took me.
Yeah,
the stars wheeled overhead, and every day was as long as the life age of the earth. But it was not the end. I felt life in me again. I have been sent back until my task is done. Mm-hmm. So, and I'll bring up your comment, Price. And hey, Price, I don't know if you're free today. If you want to join me, I have put the link for the stream in to join the panel in the chat. So if you want to join me and Aaron and everything and for our discussion, it's there. So I like how the Balrog and Gandalf are the same beings, except Gandalf took on a mortal form as an instructed by the Valar. Yeah.
Morgoth Melkor probably told the Balrogs don't take on that form.
So, well,
I'm surprised. I always wondered why Sauron didn't try to recruit the Balrog.
Well, he may not have known that any had survived. That's the thing.
Was it the last one? Because
I think that was one of the last, if not the very last Balrog that had survived.
That's why the first movie he didn't want to go to the Gates of Moria, because he knew the Balrog was there.
Yeah, and there's that very powerful, very cool scene with Saruman looking through the book, one of his books, and you see that illustration of what he says, shadow and flame. And you understand, for those of us that understand what that means, you understand that it is a Balrog. And but yeah, that honestly, for me, that has got to be one of the coolest intros. for a movie ever put to film, because it's like I said, it's big, it's epic, it's Sir Ian McKellen being an absolute badass, even though you understand that it's all
Gandalf and
CGI work.
Magneto at the same time.
Yeah, at the same time he was doing his role of Magneto in the X-Men films, and
Yeah.
everybody give a very warm welcome to a good friend of the channel, Price is well, shoot, and he disappeared.
Well, he's
Okay,
still
well,
there.
Price, when you get yourself stabilized, come on back in. I'll let you in, and we'll. So, but yeah, honestly, I have to admit, the way they structured the film, it was a slow build up to the battle at Helm's Deep. And of course, you have the Warg attack that was never even in the books in the first dang place. It was something that they added in
Mhm.
just to,
The Warhawks,
just,
yeah. But the
yeah,
Warhawks, whatever.
the
Yeah, I know.
wargs, the
Yeah, the
wargs,
wargs.
yeah.
That was in the
Those
book.
those things are ugly as hell. I would
I
want to see
know.
one of those in a dark alley. Jeez. Well,
Yeah.
you think about it. Some of the creatures in Middle Earth, you would not want to meet in a dark alley, even an ant.
No.
So, okay, that's
Oh, okay.
Bryce. That is perfectly all right, bud, and I appreciate you being here
Well,
regardless. I wish I could. I meant
I
to talk
hope,
to
I
Dr.
hope,
Brent before my next chemo session this
I hope
Wednesday.
you're doing well.
Price, I'll be praying for you, bud. And if you need anything, you know how to get a hold of me. But I hope all that goes well for you, truly.
Yeah.
So, because that's by no means a fun. That's not fun at all. But yeah, honestly, the character, to kind of go back to Eowyn a little bit. The thing about her character that I really appreciated is she is such a layered and a complex character, because she is very feminine, but she's also very strong. She's very fierce, and you don't. For a while, you had not seen that in cinema.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah, early. This was early 2000s, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, you have iconic characters. Price says
the thing is, the strong woman female characters, when they had to lead movies like early 2000s, they weren't doing very well in the box office and stuff. So this is
so to have a character like Eowyn, was, and for it to be a character that Tolkien had created, and like I mentioned, a lot of people accused him of sidelining his female characters. And I think
there weren't a lot, but
well, you think about it.
Yeah.
Fellowship, Arwen is essentially a sideline character, but what they did with her in terms of her part to play in Fellowship, they make her the one that
people have to understand. Yes, people have to understand. I agree with you. People understand. This is a fantasy world. It's Middle Earth, but it's kind of like medieval times, where mostly the men are the focus in battles.
Yeah, men do battle, women don't.
And it's not like the Viking era.
Yeah, it's not meant to be inherently. It's not meant to be sexist or anything, but it's just how the world operated in that time.
It's like that in Game of Thrones too.
Yeah, that's true.
That's how. I mean, that's how it's based.
Well, if you look at a character to kind of delve a little bit into Game of Thrones, you look at a character like Daenerys Targaryen. She would have not been allowed onto the battlefield whatsoever in actual medieval times. But in a world like Game of Thrones in Westeros, it completely and totally makes sense. She's at the head of her army. Granted,
I mean, look at Arya Stark. They would never let Arya Stark fight.
Exactly. So, and there's Eowyn has a great line that she when they're there at Meduseld.
Yeah.
Women of this land learn that they can.
I'll just say women are there. These times, women meant they would say women meant to heal, and have kids,
and take care of the home.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
it's not being sexist, guys. It's just being factual.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
It was a fact of the time. But
now it's different. Now it's different. Like it's
Yeah,
very
now the world is very much
yeah,
it is different.
yeah,
But Eowyn, what she says to Aragorn is, "Women of this land learned long ago that they can die upon the sword just as well as anyone. I fear neither death nor pain."
yeah.
And she says, and then now I remember it. Aragorn says, "What do you fear? A cage where youth and old age have come to accept it."
hmm She wants to
And
die in battle, or at
she
least
well, she doesn't necessarily want to die in battle, but she wants to be able to fight what she cares
yeah,
for, fight for what she loves, and
yes.
fight for those that she respects. And we will get into that further in the discussion for Return of the King, because she does play a very powerful role in the Battle of Pelennor Fields. And
Her and Mary very powerful. Like
oh, her and
because
Marianne.
Mary, how she's treated, Mary's treated like that too. Starts
Yes.
as a woman and as somebody who's a hobbit. Because the hobbits, there's implication hobbits cannot fight.
But the crazy thing is,
They can.
it is told through the lore of Middle
Yeah,
Earth that at various times during its history that hobbits did take up the sword.
yeah,
They did do battle. They did get into conflict, and they were relatively successful.
yeah,
That was the crazy thing. Granted, they couldn't. They had to be more strategic about how they did because of their height, because of their stature. But strength comes from the least likeliest corner, and that is very true in Lord of the Rings as well,
there's
particularly
a
in
lot
Two
of
Towers.
underdogs stuff in Lord of the Rings.
Hmm.
A lot of underdog stuff, like underdog hero, underdog, like like
Yes.
people you don't respect.
Yeah, the least, like I said,
Yeah,
well, it all comes back to that line that Galadriel says to Frodo there in Lothlorien. Even the smallest person,
yes,
and that doesn't necessarily speak to physical height. Um, it speaks to a person's position in the world.
yeah,
Even the smallest person of influence, the smallest person of stature, of renown, or anything, they can still have an impact upon the world around them. And Price, I do understand that critique, but the thing is that would have completely and utterly derailed the narrative of the story of the trilogy, particularly of the first movie in
hmm
particular. I do like the character of Tom Bombadil. He is an interesting character, but at the same time, in terms of narrative structure for a movie, it would have completely and utterly derailed the story that they were trying to tell. Now, I don't know if you know this, Price. You probably do, but what they did with Tom Bombadil's dialogue was they gave a lot of it to Treebeard.
yeah.
And as I mentioned before, I think that was a good move on Peter Jackson, Philippa Boyens, and Fran Walsh's part to take dialogue from other characters and give it to characters that um give it to other characters that they felt was appropriate. Ace, they were Rohan was not so much based on the Celts; they were based more um on Vikings, but a
Yes.
different breed of Vikings. These were Vikings that were, well, Rohan was known primarily for its cavalry. They were known. That's why they were known as the Horse Lords. They
hmm
were renowned horse breeders. They were renowned horsemen. They were primarily a military force that its strength was on horseback, and you do see that at the end of Two Towers, but you definitely see it at the Battle of Pelennor Fields in Return of the King. And like I said, we'll get into that next time, because that, my
They
gosh,
weren't invaders, though. They weren't invaders like the Vikings were. That's the only difference.
yeah,
And Eowyn's character as a shield maiden, it's like inspired by Vikings.
yeah, very true. And a face I have not seen in a little while, Eason Burkholder. Eason, good to see you. It's been a little bit, and appreciate you popping in this afternoon. Hope you've been doing well. So, um, but yeah, essentially, Ace, the Rohirrim, the Rohan, they were not based so much on Celts, but they were based more on Vikings, especially
Yeah,
with the architecture, with the style of their armor, with their weaponry, and so on.
definitely Viking. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So, and that was the great thing about Tolkien, because he gave so much time and attention to how he described each of the different races, how their architecture was designed, and you could tell that um, Tolkien had a lot of respect for waving DNR, waving at you guys. So, Aislinn, Aislinn, good to see you, bud. So, and got Price comment here. I'm a big Lord of the Rings reader, so I enjoyed these films, including The Hobbit. Yeah, probably won't be discussing the Hobbit films. It's not that I dislike them, but
look,
that's kind of a sticking. Go
I'll
ahead,
say about
Eric.
the Hobbit films. They're not terrible. Okay, they're not terrible,
No, they are not. So,
but they're not. They're to my opinion, they're okay. I think the second one, that's when it's smug, was probably the best out of the three.
I honestly thought the first one was the best of them. I mean, I like Desolation of Smaug, but the thing,
Yeah,
little bit of a,
I
little
there
bit of
was
a segue.
there was too much interference in the studio. There was too much liberties they took with the Hobbit
Yeah,
because they put a
yeah,
lot
I
of
know.
stuff about Sauron. I
Mhm.
understand why they had to put stuff about Sauron because casuals did not read the books. And if you read the Hobbit, Sauron's never really mentioned in the Hobbit. Only the
No,
ring is
no.
in the Hobbit, but
Yeah,
Sauron's never
exactly.
mentioned in the Hobbit. But they had to take liberties. Like, look, for example, in the first movie, when they're at Rivendell and you see the Morgul blade, right? They all thought the Nazgûls were dead. I'm sorry. Remember Elwald thought that he thought the Nazgûls were dead?
Hmm.
That's not possible. They can't be dead, right? By a master, they can't be dead. The Nazgûls cannot be buried or buried. If you go by the Lord of the Rings LOTR's lore in the books, the Nazgûl cannot be dead. The only way in that, the only way for
Is
Nazgûl to
for
die,
the one
the
for the
only way for
one ring
Nazgûl,
itself to be
yeah,
destroyed. Exactly. So.
yeah. The Witch King was the prophecy of the Witch King, and
Hmm.
yes, when the ring is destroyed. So that to me, when I saw that, I'm like, nope, that's bullshit. Well, that's bullshit. That's not how Nazgûl die. They can't be
Exactly.
buried.
Exactly. So,
And
and
Dumbledore, while the Mirkwood Forest and Dumbledore, that stuff is true about Lord of the
duel
Rings
the
lore.
door.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that never happened in The Hobbit.
So, and want to send a shout out to the chat, MJ1 Media, and good to see you, my friend, as
I'll
always.
say
And
this. I'll
yeah,
say
go
this.
ahead.
The
Mhm.
third Hobbit movie, well, so in my opinion, it's okay. I did like the scene where they all come to save Gandalf, Galadriel.
Yes.
I did
Yeah.
like the scene,
When
and you
they
see
come, when they
Sauron,
come to do.
and then you see the nine Nazgûl. I
Yeah,
did
I
like
know.
that.
Yeah, that was a really cool scene. I will not lie. So,
Yeah.
um, but Mega J, it's good to see you, bud. Hope you're having a good afternoon, my friend. And I'll bring up your other comment here. Um, I just quick. I'll just say
Yeah.
quickly:
Isn't this?
The Hobbits films have issues, but I still enjoy them. One issue is Azog being alive during
If
the
I
quest. It
remember,
should have been.
doesn't
Well,
Azog die early in the book, and his son someone kind of takes over? I think it.
I think I honestly, it's been so long since I've read The Hobbit. I can't honestly recall, so I'd have to do some digging on that to know for sure. So, but yeah, and
I did
I'll
like.
bring up your.
I admit I did like Theoden. Like
Mhm.
I did like Theoden. I admit that.
Well, getting back into
Yeah,
Two
Two
Towers,
Towers.
yeah. Let's be honest here. The actor they got to play Theoden, he was outstanding. I mean, before this, what
Yeah,
was his
thank you.
other what was his other big role? He was the captain on Titanic,
Who?
and I
Who? The actor who played Theoden?
the actor that played Theoden was in James Cameron's Titanic. He was the
Oh,
captain.
really?
Yeah,
He was
I
such a
can't
good.
remember
He
the name
was.
of the actor off the top of my head, but yeah, he was. That was the same. That was the same actor, and
I'll find out for
he.
you.
Oh, the name. Well, I know it's the same actor. Like I said, I can't
Oh
remember the
yeah.
name. Let's see. The only Dol Guldur thing that occurred in the events of the Hobbit was them driving Sauron out of the fortress. They already knew that he was there at that point. Driving him out helped the quest. So let's see. An MJ one here. I'll bring up your other comment.
Is his name Bernard Hill? Is that it?
Yes,
Yeah,
Bernard
it's
Hill.
Bernard Hill.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And Azog in the books died during the Battle of Moria. He was beheaded by Dane. It should have been a combination of Dane and Thorin.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
So
But they want Theoden. They want not Theoden. They want Thorin to have an arch enemy, so they kept him alive.
Oh, Price, I didn't know that. Thank you for bringing that up. I've actually heard that movie. I've just never seen it. The Ghost in the Darkness with Val Kilmer and Michael Douglas. Apparently, Bernard Hill was in that as well. So, yeah, but his other big role before this, I mean, his real claim to fame before Lord of the Rings was, of course, Titanic. And I remember listening to the audio commentary, the actors on audio commentary with Two Towers. And he made kind of an off the cuff comment, or maybe it was one.
Hey, there's a connection here, Ambassador. He was in Titanic. You know, also Titanic. Kate Winslet. Who discovered Kate Winslet? Peter Jackson.
I didn't know that.
Because one of his first movies, Peter Jackson's first movies, was it called again? I'll find it for you. Kate Winslet's first movie, one of her first movies was on Wikipedia. I'm finding it for you real quick. Okay. So much. She's been in so much stuff. So like I don't know. Like
yeah, you think?
Heavenly Creatures, right?
I didn't know that.
And that's directed by Peter Jackson.
I've never actually seen Heavenly Creatures. I'll be honest with y'all and everything. I've heard it's a really good movie, but I have never had the opportunity to see it. But
you're right, MJ Media. They could have, but they didn't.
Yeah, MJ. Yeah, that was. I'm like, wait a minute. I know you. You're the captain from Titanic. Now you're here. Now here you're a badass king. An old king, but still a badass. And one of the other things that one of the really cool relationships that does develop, particularly in the second movie, and that is, of course, the friendship between Gimli and Legolas, because they're
right at the beginning. Right at the beginning, you can hear it right at the beginning. You're like, keep up, because Gimli was so slow. And then the Helm's Deep stuff is funny.
Oh yeah, he's like, have they hit anything? And want to give a very warm welcome to another good friend of the channel. He's rather dwarvish in his demeanor.
Oh,
he has a very majestic beard, much like a dwarf does. Give a very warm ambassadorial welcome to Grandpa Geek.
My beard is actually shorter now. I had to make a compromise with Madam Geek.
Good to see you, bud. How you doing?
I'm actually doing pretty well. I finished up a stream I did a little bit ago with Jack Beers and Alicia.
Oh yeah, how's that been? I've been trying to catch those as often as I can. How have those been going?
Oh, they're going great. We're kind of rolling through them, trying to figure out how we want to approach them. I'm more of the facilitator. They're the ones really, building on the stories most of the shows, and they have the most knowledge. I'm more the facilitator and just
gotcha.
It's kind of nice. It's refreshing to have that outsider's, point of view.
I mean, yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and you talking about Lord of the Rings?
And just real quick, MJ, that's what we have been discussing primarily before you came in. You'll have to do some rewind or watch this on the replay. Mm-hmm. We've been primarily discussing the extended editions of the films. We haven't been covering just the theatrical. Because there is so much more in the extended cuts and everything. No, Grandpa, we've been covering the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the extended cut and everything. The last couple of weeks we did, obviously Fellowship last week. We're doing, we're doing Two Towers this week. So, and we're talking, like I said, we're talking about. We were talking about the different dynamics of the characters, talking about the dynamics within the films. We were just talking about Eowyn and her character.
Please continue. Please continue.
So, well, what me and Aaron had brought up before is the fact that female characters in fantasy films oftentimes have taken a side, had been sidelined in a manner of speaking. The last character that had really had a more action based or more integral part in the story, and man, this is like a film from the mid '90s, and that's Dragonheart with Kerry Russell's character. I think that's not Kerry Russell.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
Diane Meyer. Diane Meyer, I think is the
Diane
actress.
Meyer, from Starship Troopers.
I gotta say this real quick, Ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna have 3 people to play a dragon, Sean Connery, James Earl Jones, or Morgan Freeman.
Yes, and yes.
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer.
Well, no, can I add one more for you, geek?
Absolutely.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh, yes.
Okay. I will give you Benedict Cumberbatch. Absolutely.
Oh man, yes.
He's a new one though.
Smaug.
Yes, as much as those movies were well received, his voice for Smaug was frightening.
Oh, his well, and not to mention they used his movements, the mocap, for how Smaug was designed, how he moved, and so on. Not to mention his facial expressions as well. Because if you look at just a little bit of a sideline, and Ace, you have a good afternoon, bud.
Good, yeah, I'm
gonna get you next time, and always a pleasure.
He was also Sauron, wasn't he? Not in the trilogy, but in the Hobbit, he was.
He might have been. I don't know for sure. It's been so long since I've watched anything related to the Hobbit. I don't remember.
Actually, I'm gonna say this: when it comes to Benedict Cumberbatch, I love him in Sherlock, because there is actually something very relatable between me and him, and I'm not going to say it public, but if you guys want to know, I'll put it in the private.
Okay.
Hey, whatever works for you, bud. So, and Star Wars Theology, good to see you as always. I know we aren't talking Star Wars today. You'll actually have to go back to last night's stream, Star Wars, because we discussed the new trailer for Eclipse.
Yeah.
And we also talked about the casting of the actress for the lead role of Acolyte and everything. But today is Lord of the Rings, my friend. But Star Wars Theology, it's good to see it regardless. So, and I'll bring up MJ's comment here. By the way, my character I'm writing, Blue Shogun, is a human descended from a dragon. Even has dragon-like features like a tail and pointy ears. That's interesting, to say the least. But as I was saying, in terms of Eowyn's character, geek, I love her character. I loved the fact that she wants to be more aggressive in how she interacts with the world around her. But Aragorn sees in her the potential for her to be a warrior where no one else sees it. And she's been trained to be a fighter, because let's be honest here, even the women of Rohan, they would have been no slouch in battle. They don't spend a whole lot of time discussing the fact that women could potentially be fighters in Rohan.
They seem to be, Ambassador, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead, geek.
Kind of more Viking-like.
Yes,
As the
very
ambassador
much so.
said, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was the entire inspiration for the design of their architecture and for their weaponry and how and all that and their costuming and so on. Was very Nordic, was very Viking. That's how they interpreted Tolkien's description of them when they were doing pre-production for the Two Towers and for Return of the King, is that Rohan is Vikings but on horseback instead of on ship.
Yeah.
Even though Vikings they did use horses.
Well, of course they did, but I mean, you could say camels or donkeys. I mean, remember those? There were many things that were. People seem to think that only the way people traveled nowadays was over horses. You and I, especially, well, I don't know AWO very well and your religious views, but Ambassador, I know you and I know
Mhm.
that most travel back during that time in the Old Testament and even part in the New Testament was pretty much camels and donkeys, wasn't horses.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Well, because horses were not predominantly very well known in that part of the world, they were introduced much later on, and
They're more of European kind of animal.
yeah, horses were more
I in Asia, I
well known.
believe.
Well, in Asia and in Europe,
Yeah.
in particular, because well, I think horses were initially brought from Asia and they were brought
They did
over
go to the Middle
into
East. They did
Europe.
go to the Middle East. They eventually did go to the Middle East. Horses.
Oh yes, of course, because you have your very small Arabian stallions that are very fast but not particularly big. But you
Because
get enough of them.
camels would not be able to survive in European or Asian weather, where
No,
horses are able to adjust better than
yeah,
camels.
exactly, yeah, exactly. But the thing for me was the thing you have to understand the mentality of Tolkien himself. He served during the First World War.
Yeah.
And during the First World War, cavalry was still something. Horses were still something that was actively used
Horses and boats, basically.
in combat.
Yeah.
And you see his love and his appreciation for horsemanship and for skill on horseback. And that's why he poured so much time and attention um, into into Rohan, into the characters, into the lore of that particular civilization within Middle Earth. And the crazy thing for me is just this is not something bad. This is just something that I came to appreciate in the aftermath of seeing Lord of the Rings and seeing all the special features and so on. My mother ambassador has always been a huge lover of horses. They are an animal that she has a great appreciation and a great love for. And I never really understood that. I mean, I appreciated it, but I didn't understand it. But seeing the Lord of the Rings films and then watching the actors and the stunt people work with horses and so on, it gave me a deeper appreciation for just how much work and how much care goes um, into being into caring for horses and for working with them and just for their beauty and their strength and their emotional impact. I this is probably a silly little story that probably won't mean anything. When I first started dating Madam Ambassador, had gone to visit her over in her hometown, and we went to one of her old places where she used to work. It was a nursing home where she was a nursing home manager, and they actually brought in a therapy horse for the residents. And I had seen horses up close before, but I never had the opportunity to ever touch one. And actually being able to put my hand on it and pet it and look at its eye and so on, and it's a very powerful and a very visceral experience. And
Ambassador,
Mhm.
oh, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's very amazing you say that because um, I don't know if you know or if I've told you. Sorry, I get busy, I forget things.
Oh, it's all
Uh,
right.
I have a purebred Burmese mountain dog that I adopted.
Hmm.
And starting in the new year, I'm taking him up to a place and I'm going to work with this company that's there and make him a therapy dog because I want to take him. You know, I'm a veteran. You know, I'm retired. I want to
Yes.
be able to take him to the VA. I want him to take him to hospitals because he's a wonderful, beautiful, loving dog. And I'm just like, man, if we could do this, together, get certified, I think it'd be an amazing thing. And it would be what I want to do again, which is get back to serving my people, my Americans.
I gotcha. Dude, that's awesome. Truly.
Well, hopefully so.
But I find I had a conversation with Mother Ambassador after seeing the Lord of the Rings films and seeing all the actors and some people working with them and seeing how much care and how much time and attention it takes to work with horses and just how truly powerful an animal they are. I finally came to understand why she loved them as much as she did and still does to this day. And you know, I'm a lover of animals, have been all my life. I love dogs, I love cats, but this, like I said, this probably means little to anybody except maybe myself. But it's nice to have that connection with my mother because all her life she's always been a horse enthusiast, and to be able to share that experience with her now in the aftermath of films like Lord of the Rings, where horses play such a prominent role because that was the main mode of transportation in a fantasy realm that is, and of course when you have a great animal character like Shadowfax, Gandalf's horse, quote unquote,
Yes.
and the fact that you have that great little line of dialogue by Legolas, that must be one of the Miras. And my pronunciation isn't perfect, so nobody clip that out and make it sound like something that it doesn't. But he says, unless my eyes have been cheated by some spell. And Gandalf says, "This is Shadowfax, Lord of all horses, and who has been my friend through many dangers." And that was yeah, a geek. That is true. We got a lot of our views from our mothers. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I had one extra one on that. I had my mother and my
Hmm.
grandmother. As I don't know if I told you this, but
Hmm.
despite what people want to always try to tell me, I grew up in a matriarchy, and thank
Hmm.
the freaking Lord I did.
Indeed, indeed. So, but
Oh,
with
sorry.
no, you're fine. You're fine, geek. You're good.
No, no, I meant to cough. I try to mute when that happens.
Dude, it's okay. Really, no problem. Not a worry. So, but I think one of the other truly great iconic scenes from Two Towers is, of course, obviously it's an actor on it's a stunt writer on the battle back of Shadowfax, but when you see the sun rising over that hill and you see Gandalf rearing back on Shadowfax, and then you see the rest of the. You just see that one specific shot, and you realize the cavalry has come, and the Uruk-hai are about to get their asses handed to them. And It was true. It is truly one of those great. It's a truly great scene because you see Aomer riding side by side with Gandalf and the rest of his the Rohirrim, or that small portion of the Rohirrim,
Yeah.
and then you see Gandalf call down the blinding light into the eyes of the Uruk-hai, and you see Shadowfax make that leap into the first rank and of Uruk-hai pikesmen, and it's just like bust their freaking heads open, guys, kick some ass, and it is truly glorious. I mean, there is no glory in battle, as the old saying goes. War is not glorious, but in Tolkien's world, war carries a high price, but but you have those moments where you realize the heroes are going to come out on top.
Hey, Ambassador, don't forget
Yeah.
what Yoda said in Empire Strikes Back.
Wars make not one great. Yes.
You knew exactly where I was going. I knew
Of course.
Of course,
of
you
course.
did.
Of course. But you have this big bombastic battle on one side of this film, and then you have Sam and Frodo's journey on the opposite side. And you have them being captured by Faramir and his group. There's that great scene in the very powerful scene in the extended cut where you see the ambush of the Easterum by Faramir and his group, by Easterlings and everything, and the Oliphants. And Faramir has that very powerful line, or that very powerful little monologue there, where you see one of the fallen soldiers, and Faramir says, "You wonder what lie drew him so far away from home, and you wonder, would he have been just as happy to stay at home in the safe and security of his homeland?" And Faramir says, "War will make corpses of us all." And there is a very powerful truth in that for Faramir, because it is war that took his brother from him. It is war that has ravaged his home, that has ravaged Gondor for decades. And all he wants to do is try and protect his home as best as he knows how and gain the approval of his father. And that's why he does, not so much out of greed or lust for power, but simply to have the approval of his parent, of his father. And you see on the opposite side, Theoden, who has nothing but regret because of no fault of his own. His father, or he sees his son dead, and he has to bury his son. And there's a very powerful line that Theoden says to Gandalf: "No parent should have to bury their child." And those are real, legitimate tears that come out of Bernard Hill's eyes when he says that line of dialogue, because he's recalling in his mind, he says this in the audio commentary for Two Towers, he's recounting a story of a friend of his family, or something along those lines, that they recently had to bury their child because of some sort of accident or illness or whatever.
Ambassador,
Yeah, go ahead, Geek.
you kind of brought this up. I just kind of want to say,
Sure.
Ambassador, I don't think you have any children. Do you?
No, we are unable to answer.
AWO, do you have any children?
No.
This is okay. We had in my family a few weeks back, and I'm actually going to stop my camera because, quite frankly, I'm going to start crying.
I understand.
One of my cousins. Now, figuring out the cousin lineage is a pain in the ass.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Let's just say this is This was the oldest son of my great uncle and my great aunt, which meant the uncle was the sister of my the uncle was the brother of my grandmother, my paternal grandmother.
Right.
His father is suffering through Alzheimer's now.
Yeah.
The aunt is the mother, is the one really holding everything together. And unfortunately, they lost their oldest child about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was just, the first thing I think a lot of us all said was, does Uncle know? Does he know what's going on? He doesn't even have a clue. And I don't know what's worse in that aspect. Sorry, I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but
No, because, well, and that's the great thing about a film like Lord of the Rings, because it does give us the opportunity to have these discussions. Because I don't think it was necessarily Tolkien's intention per se, but he went through one of the most brutal wars in the history of the world. That's, of course, World War One, and it most definitely changed him.
And he also probably went through the Spanish flu too.
That too.
Yep.
So,
That
but the fact that Tolkien was able to take his experiences from the First World War
Mm.
and incorporate them into this story. And then, of course, Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens were able to take everything that was in those books and put it into these films. It's a powerful testament to the skill of writers and creatives.
Yeah.
For them to be able to take their own life experience and put it into a fictional setting, even a fantasy setting, and be able to have a very powerful and visceral impact upon the audience. And for characters like Theoden and Denethor, one who regards their children and even their close relations like Eowyn and Eomer, Theoden says it to Gandalf. He should have loved her, Eowyn, like a father, rather than her having to live in fear and caring for a sickly old man.
Mm-hmm.
And him unintentionally driving Eomer away, his nephew. And he wants to do right by the family that he has left, and that is obviously his niece and nephew, Eomer and Eowyn. So, and I do want to send a shout out to the chat and everything, to Fook Norris, Leroy Kong, and Josh Bowen. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Good to see you all. And Josh, I know, let's see, haven't seen Lord of the Rings in years, but came by to show support. Josh, I highly encourage you, even though it's been a very long time, if you have the extended editions at your fingertips, go check
Ambassador, I've never told you the story of when I first saw Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, go ahead, Geek, please.
Okay, no, it's you're gonna probably laugh at this one a little bit. I was out in the field. I was in the Marine Corps at the time. We were out in the field, and we put this movie on, and it was kind of a little long. It was pirated. I mean, this was like literally pirating days. And I knew nothing about Lord of the Rings. High fantasy wasn't really my thing. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I'm watching this movie. I'm like, oh, this is good. I was on night shift. I was a radio operator. I'm watching this movie, and I'm like, oh, good. And then all of a sudden, the movie, I was like, what the fuck? Sorry, I apologize. I know.
It's okay. It's all right.
But I mean, the way it just ended with the river thing, and all of a sudden, I'm like, what is this? I literally was freaking out. I was like, what the hell did I just get into? Now, flash forward to Return of the King. that was the only one I saw in theater.
Mm-hmm.
And for as long as it is, and as bad as my bladder is, I never left the room. I was on the edge of my seat.
Don't get me started on bladder story, man. I went to see like this is not Lord of the Rings stuff, but when I saw, I think it was Solo. It was 2018, right? That Solo came out. 18, I think it was, right? I think I went to the.
Roughly.
I think I went to the bathroom 3 or 4 times during that film.
I don't know. I actually like Solo, but Ambassador,
I did too.
That's not what
I
we're
did
talking
too. I
about.
did too. I did too. I didn't go to. I wasn't. I didn't go to the bathroom because of how bad the film was. Because I liked the film too. It was just. I guess I was just drinking a lot of I'm like. I'm hoping. I'm just hoping for Spider-Man. I go to the bathroom at least once. That's it. That's all I'm asking for. Because it's a 2.5-hour movie.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about next week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trust me.
I'm seeing it Thursday.
Well, I'm sorry. I might have to do a double feature because I still haven't seen Ghostbusters yet. I was supposed to go this weekend, but things did not work out. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I might have to pull a double feature.
Ambassador, gonna be anybody to chat.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not gonna get a Doctor Strange trailer released on YouTube. Multiverse Max. Apparently, it's gonna be shown the trailer before the Spider-Man No Way Home movie. So you have to go to the theater to see the Doctor Strange 2 trailer.
Okay.
Apparently. Man, I think that's a good thing though. Gets hyped.
Yeah.
But I think we should get back to Two Towers.
Yeah.
I love like the development of Eowyn anymore, especially in the third movie. Like because this is third movie. Eeyore is one of the people that talks down to kind of assist, not really his sister, but to Mary, right? More to Mary. If I'm correct, right? He's like, I'm not worried about his heart, but I'm worried about his reach, something like that, right?
That was in Return of the King, actually.
Yeah.
I enjoyed my favorite thing, honestly, was the living trees. I mean, I don't know whether
the ants. Mm-hmm.
Yes. What were they called, Ambassador?
Ants.
That was my favorite of that whole movie. I absolutely love that.
Well, I don't know if you know this, Geeking. You probably do. John Rhys Davies did the voice for Treebeard, as well as his part for Gimli.
I think I remember that. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I remember that. But it's just the whole tree people and the way they did it and how it was. I mean, literally in Two Towers, the whole thing with the tree people, that was really the big game changer at the Two Towers.
Well, I would say I agree with you in terms of the CGI work and the robotics work and so on, but I would say the big game changer from this film was more so.
We lost
Aaron. He'll probably be back. His internet might be a little wonky. It happens. Honestly, and we discussed this where he came in. Geek was the character of Gollum, because what Andy Serkis was able to do with that character was truly phenomenal, honestly. And
I would agree.
Well, not to mention just the dynamic of the entire character itself, of Gollum himself and everything. And I don't really want to rehash what I said already, but the psychological element for Gollum, it's truly an astounding piece of writing and performance by Andy Serkis, who's gone on to have amazingly a pretty good career in Hollywood. I mean, he's done acting, obviously, he's done mocap work, he's done voice work and so on, and now he's directing. He's I can't remember there was a film he directed both oh, for heaven's sakes, Venom and Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. and both movies were fairly well.
Venom. Are you talking about the actor himself?
Well, Andy Serkis was the director, and he did some second unit directing for the Lord of the Rings trilogy as well, for different parts. So give me a minute, because I'm pretty sure it was Andy Serkis who did direct Venom.
Yeah, he might have directed it, but it was Tom.
Tom Hardy played Venom. Yes, yeah.
No, Tom Hardy also voiced Venom, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying that Andy Serkis.
Oh, I didn't even know Andy Serkis directed or produced.
Actually, no. It was an actor or a director by the name of Ruben Fleischer that did the first Venom movie. Let's see. Hang on. Maybe it was Andy Serkis who did. Maybe he did direct the second one. I don't know. Hang on. If I can get Chrome to work.
Yeah, good luck there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Andy Serkis did direct Let There Be Carnage. So.
Oh, no wonder it was good. No, actually, here's the thing. I know this is going to get a little off topic here.
That's all right, Aaron. It's fine.
No problem, Aaron. I know this is going to get a little off topic, but here's the thing. I was never as a Spider-Man fan. Venom was never really somebody I cared about or liked as an antagonist. Carnage was, but I will say this. The Venom movie with Tom Hardy in it, I enjoyed. And when I saw Let There Be Carnage, especially when, you had who played Carnage, I was like, I'm sorry, but going from Cheers to Natural Born Killers, I mean, Woody Harrelson, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I think he is one of the most underrated actors in all of cinema history.
I don't know if I would say he's definitely underrated, most certainly in everything. So, guys, I've got another stream I'm gonna be doing here in a few hours, so I'm probably gonna wrap up here in a few minutes. So I'm gonna let you all have final thoughts on Two Towers, and then we will call it an afternoon, at least, well, for now. So, Grandpa Geek and Aaron, final thoughts on Two Towers. Floor is yours. Whoever wants to go first. Just be polite.
AWO, you were here before you go first.
Okay. Two Towers. Lord of the Rings, Two Towers. The middle movie, or the middle book of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Well, this movie, man. What can I say about this movie? Well, 2 thumbs up. It had everything like this but this whole trilogy was perfection. But this movie itself, the setup to Return the King, introduction of Rohan and the characters to get you invested in Theoden, Eowyn, maybe not much as Eeyore until the third movie. Gandalf, how it becomes Gandalf the White. We forgot to talk about Pippin and Merry, how they grew up. They grew up. They became more mature in this movie, helping with Treebeard take down Saruman when Saruman's army is at Helm's Deep. That battle scene at the end, Helm's Deep. The epic scene when you see on top of the hill with Riders Rohan and Gandalf. I mean, you know what? I'll just say this: epic movie. Well, all of them epic. I can say more, but it's gonna be too long.
I would love to give this the sequel treatment, but it was part of a trilogy. So I'm gonna say this because I can't do the sequel thing like the sequel is superior because this was a trilogy. I'm gonna say this: Two Towers was basically the first even remotely close to scoring an Empire Strikes Back. I'm going to leave it at that.
I guess totally agree with you there. I think. Oh, I just want to say one thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
The score of Two Towers, like the score of Lord of the Rings, the first movie was great. Two Towers, when they introduced the Rohan theme, they took it top notch.
Oh yes.
It's only been recently, in the last year or two, I've really started paying attention to scores. And the more I'm watching movies I've seen in the past and finally letting my hearing is excellent to listen to scores, I'm like, oh my God. And I said this about The Shining. I said The Shining would not have even remotely been scary if it had not been for the music and the score.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, because if you hadn't had that, it would have just been boring as shit.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking for myself, I mean, we've spent almost 4 hours the last couple of weeks just breaking down these films, and in terms of Two Towers, it is it right up there as an equal with Empire Strikes Back? As much as I love this film, I have to say no, because not because I think it's any lesser of a film, but the emotional stakes for Empire and the emotional stakes for Two Towers are completely different. Not to mention the journeys for the characters are entirely different in a lot of ways. But is it in that caliber of film in general? Yes, absolutely. I would say
I think
that
that's maybe where. I'm sorry, Ambassador. I think maybe that's where I should have clarified. I think when you said caliber, yeah, I wasn't going for point at point.
Oh no. I understand. I understand exactly what you were saying, Geek. No worries.
I mean, look, I know what you're saying because sequels have that reputation of not being good as the first movie.
But the thing is, Two Towers is not a quote unquote sequel in the traditional sense of the term.
Yeah.
It is part of a longer narrative. Empire and New Hope and Return of the Jedi, the original trilogy, they are a trilogy, but they had the potential to not ever be a trilogy per se, because at the time, nobody knew that Empire Strikes Back was ever going to be a thing. All they knew for certain that was the first film. The first film was going to be a thing.
Yeah, you could easily, like, really, with the first film with New Hope, you could have taken it was the end of Star Wars, Space Hell.
It was
the Death Star's the story. That's it. Right?
Yeah, it had a satisfying beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
The fact that you got a second film was astonishing and a great thing, obviously. But with Two Towers, it is part of a longer narrative. And it has great moments. It has great character moments in particular. I mean, and we've talked about several of them here today. I mean, Frodo and Sam and Gollum, Aragorn's journey, Eowyn's journey, the distinction between the parental roles of Theoden and Denethor, Faramir's character, Meriadoc and Peregrine, their journey, and of course, you have one of the greatest on-screen villains of all time, portrayed by one of the greatest actors of all time, of course, Sir Christopher Lee. May he rest in peace, as Saruman. Saruman is a great villain, a pure villain, and a dynamic one.
Hey, Ambassador, it's interesting. When I watched all three movies of Lord of the Rings, read the books, I don't think you would be. Who do you think I think would maybe the hero? Because to me, in the Lord of the Rings, in the book and in the movies, it's not Frodo, in my opinion.
There's more than one.
I would say
what
I'm saying is, when it comes to what I feel is the real hero of those books and those trilogies is actually Samwise Gamgee.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would. Well, here's the thing. Sam has his part to play in this story, just as all the other characters do.
I think
I would
Tolkien. I think Tolkien intended to have more than one hero.
Yes, I would say that I would say that the three focal point heroes for this story, the three main protagonists of the story, are Frodo, Sam, equally, and Aragorn just by himself.
Yeah.
But think about this. This is the beautiful thing about it, is we can all look at these three characters, like you just said, and say, yes, they are all the heroes. It's just we have an interpretation on who we feel is the first hero, whatever. Yeah, the main hero. And I understand people would think it's Frodo. I get that. I think people would understand Aragorn.
I just tell him it's more than one hero.
Yeah. So. I think Samwise Gamgee. It's like, one time I had this conversation with a buddy of mine in the Air Force, ambassador. And we were talking about Star Wars, and he goes, "Are you really a Star Wars fan?" I said, "Of course I am." This was before the whole sale. He goes, "Yeah, who's the hero of Star Wars?" And I literally looked at him and I said, "Are you kidding me? R2-D2." Do you know what he did? He hugged me.
I cannot say I necessarily disagree with that assessment. I honestly can't. I cannot say I disagree with your assessment of Samwise's role as one of the heroes of the story, because he is the one that clearly carries Frodo on his back into the heart of Mount Doom. So yeah,
Sam's
I would say this about Samwise. I'm sorry, AW. I don't mean to. He did what we have done many times. He walked with Frodo. When Frodo couldn't walk, he carried him. When Frodo could walk, he walked with him. When Frodo was stumbling, he held his hand. Heroes are, and I mean, heroes are all different forms.
They all come in different forms. Yeah. Yes, very true. Well, and the other, and just a quick shout to the chat and everything. Jeff B, it's good to see you, but we're actually going to be wrapping up here in just a minute, but appreciate you popping in, and definitely check out the replay, and good to see you as always, my friends. So, but yeah, honestly, Sam plays his part most definitely. He will definitely play his part in Return of the King, which we'll be covering next week or later this week, whichever way you want to look at it. But Sam he most definitely does stand amongst the heroes of this trilogy, of these books, and he is a truly inspiring character because he does show that strength can come from the least likeliest quarter. So, anyways, folks, we are going to go and wrap up here. I do want to thank everybody who tuned in this afternoon. I want to thank Aaron of Aaron's World Order, and MB Geek, Grandpa. Gentlemen. Great discussion, gentlemen, and thank you all for being a part of it today. I deeply appreciate it. I do want to let you all know I will be going live again later this evening and everything. Going to be doing a Christmas movie watch along over on my Twitch and Facebook accounts, and we're going to be peeping a holiday favorite of mine, Home Alone. And I will be, if you don't have a copy of it, I will have it running on stream and everything for those of you that don't have a copy. But if you have your own copy and you just want to watch alone that way, you can do that as well, and that will be at 7:30 Central Time. I will be dropping the link, as always, in the chat for anybody that wants to join me live on panel for that. So, and I hope you'll have.
I'm sorry. I can I answer you that real quick?
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
not. I'm not on Discord anymore. I don't go on there. Yeah, that's why you're probably not sending me. Sorry, Ambassador. I just want to answer.
No, it's okay. No, you're fine. You're fine, geek and everything. Not a problem. So, and Yvette, good to see you again in the chat and everything. I know you were here earlier as I got me and Aaron got started. So, but like I said, folks, hope to see some of you this evening and everything, and looking forward to a good time. Of course, it's Home Alone. How can you not have fun, even if you aren't
Yeah.
home alone? So,
How can you not love this movie?
yes, exactly. Anyways,
Kevin,
folks,
I know that
we'll
face.
see. We will see you all later this evening, or we will see you later on this coming week, and you'll have a great week. And of course, from the Ambassadorial family and myself in particular, a very Merry Christmas. We will see you later see you later. And until next time, these are the ambassadors signing off.